Hi everyone. I've received a lot of questions about the mini presentation, so I'm going to make my own video of a mini presentation to kind of help you see what I'm looking for and how your mini presentation should be structured. I'll be presenting on the book Madwoman in the Attic, written by Sandra Gilbert and Susan Gubar in 1979. The edition I am looking at is actually the Millennial Edition, which was published in 2000 by Yale University Press. This book was written originally during the second wave of feminism and was groundbreaking. They did things with literature and made theory about things that haven't been talked about before. However, as groundbreaking as it was at the time, further research and examination of the text has proven that the book was actually very exclusive. Even though they used terms like every woman and all women, they excluded a lot of minorities and different classes. They only focused on white women and the middle class. So, because of this, the text has been deemed um, not really usable, and it doesn't get talked about as much as it used to. So, moving on to my chapter, they begin by talking about men as authors and men as creators. Because up until about this point in history, men were the dominating authors and published the most text, mostly fiction, is what they focused on. And they talked about the modes of women that they created in their realms of writing. They talked about the angel and the monster, and they used the classic tale Snow White to make their points. So think of Snow White. She is sweet and innocent and pure and does her chores, works for men. She is a wonderful housewife and then makes a wonderful princess. Now, the evil queen, on the other hand, she, by name, is evil. She's not as beautiful. She's scary. She's wicked. And oddly enough, she turns to a looking glass or a mirror for advice. She talks to her mirror, which has a male voice, and then she takes that voice and uses it as her own. When the mirror tells her that Snow White is the fairest in the land and she cannot be loved by everyone if Snow White is around, she then takes it upon herself to kill Snow White. She takes that male voice and uses it as her own. These two binaries are complete opposite of each other, by the name binary. And that is how women existed in text with most male writers. She talks about, or the authors talk about, Hemingway, Henry Miller, just to name a few of the authors, or the male authors, that use these binary modes. They strongly urge women to break out of these molds and write women as they are, a well-rounded, multidimensional character. But how they complicate this matter is they're saying that by writing, they are adopting that male voice. They are becoming creators. So they themselves are then monsters. And there's this sort of contradiction or confliction by being a female writer, but at the same time, it's the only way to break these stereotypical molds. So, to analyze this text, let's start by looking at the language. They use very accessible language and shocking language. So, an example of pathos would be the first line of the text. The pen is an example of a penis. That is shocking. Whether you agree with it or not, based on their argument, you might feel a certain way. But just the language that they use to open up their text is shocking and going to draw emotion out of you. The fact that there are women writers and talking about the experience of being a female writer and reading so many books where women are set in these binaries, they have a certain emotional connection to what they're writing about. because they're women, they also have credibility to talk about what it's like to be a multidimensional woman with many layers of feelings. Also, the fact that their book was published by Yale Press also carries authority and credibility. Um, Also, they use logos. So the logos in the text would be the fact that they very carefully and meticulously go through a large number of texts to create this study that they are writing about. They didn't just pull, a couple examples from one or two books. They used a lot of books over the 18th and 19th century to discuss their work. Also, to go back to ethos and pathos, um, using using Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and using other credible texts that have been around for a long time, from the 19th century, that gives them credibility. They're stories that a lot of people know, especially if you're studying literature and would read this book, that you will see and recognize these texts and know the stories, but then they're presenting them to you in a different way. So, the so what though is more found in the millennial edition of this book. The original claim that Madwoman in the Attic is no longer relevant to us as scholars, I think can be dispelled by their language that is easily accessible and informative without being too harshly academic. We've all read those texts that, are hard to get through, and the language is just very hard to understand and is not accessible. However, this language in the book is easily readable for those in the scholarly community and those who are students too. Also, to go along with that idea of accessibility and breaking away from this idea that they're very singular in their thoughts, Gilbert and Gubar are synonymous with each other. In the academic community, you don't think of one without the other. However, in this millennial edition, they decide to break apart their voices and write different chapters of the book and focus on different things. They made their singular, every woman voice that they've so commonly been known to support. They broke it up, and that voice turned into two voices, providing much more analysis and criticism than just one singular voice that they've known to in the academic community. So for these reasons, I believe that the original claim that this text is no longer suitable is now dispelled with this new edition. So, as you can see, I talked about ethos, pathos, and logos. Unfortunately, my text did not have kairos because, first of all, the original text was written in 1979, and second, even the millennial edition was written in 2000, which is now 14 years ago. So some of these issues have already been dispelled. Although this text can be still relevant, it's not like this is a pressing right time, right place moment. So that's why I didn't talk about kairos. As you can see, I had evidence, which was the summary, which kind of backed up my claim, which I introduced. I gave you some background information on the book. Based on how much time you have, you may or may not have time to do that. So that's okay. If you're running short on time, you might want to consider doing something like that. Also, make sure that you are clear on what you're doing. I specifically said ethos, pathos, logos. You don't necessarily have to do that, but make sure we know as your audience that you're talking about emotional appeals when you're doing that, when you're talking about logical appeals. I'm sure there's lots of things in this book that I have left out that I didn't get a chance to talk about because of the 5-minute time crunch, and if you have to leave things out, try to just only hit the important points. I talked about their language. I talked about how they used a shocking opener. That's what I mean by what did you learn? I want you to talk about how these ideas are being presented to us, not just what they're saying. The structure of what you're looking at is just important as the context. So keep that in mind. I think my I think my ending was a little awkward. Just practice. I kind of did this off the cuff. So good luck. If you have any questions, please email me. I hope this video helps. I hope you guys all have time to watch it. Sorry it's going up so late, but good luck, and I will see you tomorrow morning. Take care.